It's time for Inside the Sixers. Keith Pompey from the Philadelphia Inquirer set to join us here live. And I know he's got a nice report out there that everybody wants to hear about, but I wore this shirt today, and that's when I said, who's going to be our Inside the Sixers guest today? And when I said, this is the shirt I have on, we have to have Keith Pompey on to be our Inside the Sixers guest today. Keith Pompey from the Philadelphia Inquirer. How are you, my friend?
Hey, man, what's up? Is your laundry dirty or what? Why? What's going on, brother? Like, dang, I feel sorry for you.
It's actually very clean, crisp. I mean, look at this thing. It's beautiful. Nice West Virginia.
Man, they shouldn't let you in the building with that stuff on.
Got my vaccine today. I felt I had to show the pride out there. You know,
okay.
Everything's all good. Obviously, the Sixers and this Kyle Lowry stuff is starting to gain a little buzz, as you kind of reported today, that he would not be adverse to coming back home to Philadelphia and play. So I guess we're still like over a month from, about a month to the day, to the deadline. Is this something that you think would happen sooner than later, or is it just that time of the year where we're starting to like, hey, this is where you are. You're the 1 seed, you're the 4 seed, you're starting to feel yourself out, and these things might happen? Or do you think Daryl Morey wants to kind of get this sooner than later?
You know, I think it's kind of sort of like the 1 seed, so to speak, the 4 seed, because, you know, Daryl Morey would like to get it done sooner or later. But if I'm the Toronto Raptors, you know, there's a bunch of teams who are interested in him or going to be interested in him. And you want to do right by Kyle, but at the same time, you want to see what you can get for him. You know what I mean? And here's something else. Like, before, they lost their last 2 games, but before that, they had a 4-game winning streak. They won 7 out of 10. So they start thinking, hey, we're starting to be players too. Like, maybe we can make a nice little run. It's going to come a point in time when they decide that, well, we can't win a championship, so we have to get something for them. But, yeah, these are like the beginning stages. A lot of these moves happen at the 11th hour, so to speak.
Yeah, and obviously, you know, now the one thing is the Sixers, to what they might have to give up in this situation, do you find that to be challenging for them? Because to make the contracts work, Toronto's going to have to take on a ton of different guys. That's before you get to a younger player, right? Like, the way that I kind of look at it is you got to give up like Danny Green, Ferguson, Scott, probably somebody else. And then, oh, by the way, do you want Thibault, Maxey, one of those players? So does Toronto want to take on like 5 different players?
And I think that's the key thing about expiring contracts. You know what I mean? They could be guys that you trade for and you immediately waive them, you know, so to speak. I mean, it's all about, you know, freeing up space for next season, you know, because you're going to get $30 million off the books when Kyle leaves. So I think that's what it is. But, I mean, you're raising a great point. I mean, if there's another team that has a guy who has a higher salary that you may be able to take, because you still have to squeeze these guys in, even if you just waive them the next day. But to me, I think the thing is the draft picks and the young talent. I mean, they have guys like, you know, and I like both of them, like Maxey and Matisse Thybulle, who are 2 guys that a lot of teams around the league really like. But at the same time, if you're the Sixers, do you want to give that up, knowing all the nice young talent you gave up in the past and how these guys went on to other teams and became superstars? So that's the tough thing about this whole thing right now with Kyle Lowry.
Yeah, knowing he's from the area, knowing that he wants to be on a championship caliber team, how much do you think plays a role in maybe bringing him back? Like, if they think that after this contract expires at age 35, if they can bring him back again to maybe help the push in the next year or the year after, do you think that that's a possibility or a thought, or is that more of a maybe they just let the contract expire and go for it all this year?
Here's the thing. I think if you go and you get rid of those 2 guys, if you get rid of, like, let's say if you get rid of some nice young talent, I think you have to bring them back. I mean, because, I mean, the thing is, you're doing all that for a rental for you to be able to be competitive with Brooklyn, right? But, you know, that's a huge investment just to throw it out there and don't bring the guy back. I think that, you know, me personally, I've always said that this year is great. I think that we all got ahead of ourselves, and I think we talked about this earlier. But I always thought the following season was going to be the year that the 76ers really made some noise and made some damage. So if you give all that up, you have to think that the window is this year, next year, maybe the year after that, and then it will close. So I can't see giving all that stuff up for a guy who's going to say, thank you, I'm going to go get paid elsewhere next year.
Now, Keith, I think you look at Brooklyn obviously as the biggest challenger. The Bucks are probably going to be in this mix, but Brooklyn's probably the team. If you are to beat Brooklyn, are you going to try to get more firepower or find a defensive-minded approach to try to go at them? In other words, if I have to trade Thibault away to get Lowry, my mindset now becomes I'm going to try to outgun Kevin Durant, James Harden, and Kyrie Irving, or do I just say Lowry's great, but we got to stick with the defensive-minded guys even if we're more limited offensively because that's our best way?
That's a great question. I mean, Thibault, I would hate to have to give Thibault up because of that. Like, I think next year he's going to be a heck of a player, a better player. He's going to have time to work on his offensive game. The intriguing thing about Kyle Lowry is he has that dog in him. Like, you know what I mean? He's like a North Philly kid, and I don't like labeling kids from certain neighborhoods, but he plays with that grit. When they introduce him, they don't say,
he's proven that what you're saying is he's got this in him, and he's proven it at this level.
He's proven it at that, and that's something that the Sixers don't have completely. If you bring him in there and you know that he can also play off the ball, he's not a bad defender. He's physical. He does all that other stuff. He gets on people's nerves. I think when you play a team with going up against a James Harden, going against a Kyrie, stuff like that, that's the type of player you need to get in their head. And he also motivates his teammates. But again, I understand what you're saying about Thibault because I think he's going to be a great player, and you're also going to miss what he brings off the bench defensively. But I do believe that tenacity that Kyle Lowry brings to the table is going to benefit the Sixers going up against a team like Brooklyn.
Yeah, Keith Pompey, at Pompey on Sixers. It's inside the Sixers here every day. We go inside what the Sixers are doing, and right now they're doing pretty well. They're in first place, but I feel like this kind of conversation is because Morey and this team know that they probably need a little more. They got that second half schedule came out, and it's like the old Big East. I mean, you got a fist fight every single night of the week, it seems like, in the second half.
Exactly, it is. Oh, isn't it crazy? I mean, you're looking at it, they're going to play, what is it, like, I think it's 32 games in 67 days. I mean, 32 games in 67 days. And, like, I saw one game where they have a back-to-back with San Antonio and then Chicago the next day. And then from Chicago, they have to fly right back to Texas again to play, like, a third game in 4 days. It's crazy. I mean, this schedule is crazy. And you think about it, the way the roster is right now, I believe that the Sixers are going to slide a little bit, just because the teams are going to be tougher. They're going to slide.
There's no question that schedule, and they have like a West Coast trip where they're playing. I thought it was the Philly schedule. I'm like, they're playing every night of the week here. What's going on with this thing?
Yeah.
But it's going to be pretty brutal. So that's another thing, Keith, is one thing about the Nets is they're not very deep. The Sixers, though, aren't very deep. But if you have to send 4 guys out just to get one, what kind of bench are you? So you're also got to manage, if I get a Lowry back or any player where I'm going to have to give up multiple pieces, what kind of bench are you left with?
Yeah, that's the problem. Like, and when you think about it, let's talk about the other teams involved, right? So you talk about the Sixers, you talk about the Clippers, you talk about Miami. I mean, I think the team that's the best fit for him, the team that can give up the most, even though they don't have a lot of draft picks, would be the Clippers, just because they have more veteran players who make more money and who can come off the books. But I think that would be the best fit. Like you said, the Sixers, they're very top heavy with the salary. And then, you got to add a lot of people outside of that. I don't know if they want to get rid of you're not going to get rid of a Tobias Harris, a Ben Simmons, no way Joel Embiid. But are you willing to get rid of some of these other guys? And then it's going to have to add up to a lot. So you're saying a lot. Yeah, I mean, what you're saying is a lot. And there's a reason why there's multiple teams involved. And there's a reason why, Daryl Morey is like sitting back watching that right now, because it's just a lot to give up for a player who you may be able to sign and you may not. And let's face it, he'll be 35 years old. He's making $30 million a year right now. He still plays at a high level, so he still wants to make the money that's the same. And are you willing to invest in that and then mess up and maybe have, a team that's capped out again? I think he's a good choice for the Sixers, but I'm also not the general manager who knows that the last people who were in charge, a couple of them lost their jobs because of the contracts they gave out.
Yeah, very true. What is the current update on Seth Curry? Look, he started out the season shooting 62% from three, and everyone got all excited. Then COVID happened, slowed down a little bit. Now the ankle injury. And Gil and I were going back and forth earlier in the year that he's so important to the flow of this offense. I mean, he really is with the way that he was spacing the floor out and drilling them down. And now it seems like you're not getting that consistency. And is that a correlation to maybe sometimes the struggling offense?
Yeah, I mean, I think I do think that has a lot to do with it, because when you look at all the guys who had COVID, and talk about a guy, Josh Richardson, a guy who was traded for, he was on fire when he first went to Dallas. Then he gets to COVID. He's Mr. Inconsistent. Jason Tatum, he's an all-star. He's one of the top players in the league, Mr. Inconsistent. And Seth Curry's the same way. I mean, it's one of those things that, no one can put a pulse on it, because there are certain days players play well, and there's other days they look like they never played in the NBA before. And I think that has a lot to do with it. His body is banged up. He had ankle problems beforehand. Right now he's probable for tonight. But yeah, you have to say that the COVID contributed a lot to what's going on right now.
Sixers Mavs tonight right here on 97.3 ESPN. I'm interested to see what the Sixers do with Luka. I mean, do you say Ben Simmons? Let's see that matchup. How do they handle that? Because I think that might be one of the most enjoyable things to get to watch, and you get to be in the building for that.
Yeah, you know what? Last year when they played, I believe, I forget where it was. I think it might have been a game in Dallas. And yeah, I think that's Ben played in that game. And I'm telling you, Ben really put it on the guy. And I was extremely impressed. Like, Ben, took it as motivation. Like, okay, this guy is great. This guy is all this and that. People maybe starting to forget about me a little bit. Let me D him up. And Luka got points. But, you look at the shooting percentage. It was one of those things, well, he took that many shots to get that much. You know what I mean? And it was one of those. So I think that is going to be intriguing. I don't know if they're going to start Ben off on him, but I do believe that there's going to come a point in time where Ben's going to draw that assignment, and we're going to see it. And I think Ben is up for the challenge because he wants to be the defensive player of the year. He wants to play these guys and guard these guys. And I think that, it's one of those things for bragging rights. Like, this is the guy you guys are saying the best point guard in the league. Well, let's see what we can do.
Yeah, I want to get your thoughts on how Doc Rivers plays this sometimes, because you saw Danny Green on James Harden, and then they made the switch to Ben Simmons. And when they played the Suns, you saw Danny Green on Devin Booker. Although, with Chris Paul, sometimes you got to have Ben play on him as well. But there was sometimes he wasn't, and he was on an off assignment. Do you like that Doc Rivers does that? Do you think it's beneficial to save Ben Simmons, allow him to explode in other areas, and then utilize him defensively when needed? How do you assess what Doc Rivers does with Ben defensively?
It's one of those things, like a lot of times when you want to see a matchup, you want to see the guy lock them down for the whole game. But then when you look at the depth problems that the Sixers have, if they also want Ben to attack on offense, they want him to get out to go on fast breaks and stuff like that. And typically these type of caliber of guards that they want him to guard, that's a workout in itself. You're going to tire yourself out. So I get the gist that where Doc is kind of sort of like, well, you know what? I don't want to tire this guy out. I have to put some other people on him. And then when it comes down to like the clutch time, let's see if Ben could knock him out. Go to work with him. Because, it so happened, he was on De'Aaron Fox early on in that game, and he struggled a little bit. But then when Matisse Thybulle came on him with some fresh legs, Matisse did a way better job than him. So I think it's one of those things where, I don't want to speak for Doc. I'm just assuming. But it's one of those things where you just don't want to tire Ben out as a two-way player,
right?
Going up against those type of players.
How do you manage what Thybulle brings defensively in a playoff situation where what he brings? He played 15 minutes the other night. I mean, that's going to be a very interesting storyline, I think, Keith, over the second half is how much more can you incorporate him with the offensive limitations, but what he brings defensively, that dynamic's going to be super interesting.
Yeah, it is. I think it all comes down to A, who's on the floor with him. B, it's one of those things where you're hoping and you're praying that he takes that next step to whereas, like, look, you got to be comfortable. Just take the shots, be comfortable, and things will work out. Because what he brings on that, like, I know what you're saying, that managing type thing, but what he brings on the defensive end is just phenomenal.
He shot 5 threes the other night in 15 minutes.
Yeah.
I thought that was it. Like, that's, to me, says they're telling him, you go out there, don't worry about it. Let it go, man.
Exactly. Because you think about it, last year, he surprised us. I mean, he came out, there was no pressure on him, and he was draining threes early on. Then he got injured, and then he took a step back a little bit offensively. But, yeah, you just have to have him out there feeling comfortable and play. The good part about it is the playoffs are months away. You get a chance to let him grow more into that offensive role that you need him to be in. But if he can knock down some shots the way he plays defense, man, he's going to really help this team out in the playoffs.
Keith, now this is kind of a way off the beaten path type of question with Tobias Harris, who is having a great year, could have been an all-star. There was a lot of people talking about that contract. If Morey had a shot to unload that deal to get money back of equal but get a shorter term, do you think he would like to say, hey, if I can get someone making in other words, if he said, I'll give you Harris to get the money back, but to get out of that contract earlier, or have they come to terms with, we're okay with paying him that money?
That's a good question. It's weird because, Tobias, like there's a lot of teams. I don't know if there's a lot of teams that are willing to take it. Now, he's a great player, right? A good player.
Yeah, this isn't a knock on him. This is just,
it's not a knock on him.
If we get the shot to get out of that deal, maybe we do it.
Yeah, get a deal. But, it seems like, I would say, like, if he didn't come on as strong as he has this season, I would say 100% definite. But when you look at him this year, you have to be honest. I know Ben Simmons is the all-star, but Tobias Harris was the Robin to Joel Embiid's Batman this season. Like, he had one bad game that I saw. That was the first game against Toronto on Sunday. But outside of that, he's been the guy who's been steady, and he's been doing a lot. Like, he won the game against the Lakers. So I think that for a team like the Sixers, you need a Tobias Harris type of guy to win the championship. But I understand what you're saying.
Yep.
But most of the time, guys like that, they want to be the alpha dog. And I don't know if you're going to be the alpha dog on this team with Joel.
Well, I'll tell you, you're in the building, so you get to see him live. Totally different mindset, intensity. When he catches that ball, he has an idea right away. Before he'd catch it, and he's like, dribbling, what do I want to do? Now, catch, shoot. Catch, put it on the floor. He knows right off the bat what he wants to do. I think it's a totally different guy from what I've seen, and you're in there to see him. You could get a better indication, but from what I'm in the past, you could almost see him, the wheels turning in his head about what he wants to do. Now he has a plan as soon as the ball comes to him.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Joel has grown up. He has matured. He's he's more steady. The last game he had 6 turnovers. I understand that. But for Joel has really, he's taken that leap forward, and that's the reason why he's a front runner to be the MVP right now.
And with that, it's why I think you can believe in this team finally, where they weren't ready because they didn't have the right mindset. They had talented guys who weren't mature enough. Now they have talented guys who have the different maturity level. And that's why I think if you're a fan, you can let your guard down a little bit and maybe believe in this team more.
Unless that defensive strategy by the Nick Nurse squad scares you into thinking maybe there's a blueprint. Do you think that now maybe there's a blueprint to slow down Embiid and force those other guys to beat you? Some nights it works, like you saw in Game 1. And in Game 2, it didn't work in Game 1 and it did in Game 2.
Put it this way, it's a blueprint that showed Daryl Morey that we need to upgrade this roster. That's what it is.
Yeah.
Because you need guys who are going to make those shots. That's what it is. You're going and not just for early on in the game. They have to be steady and knock it out throughout the game. That's what it is.
Tonight should be a fun one. The Mavs are here. They're struggling a little bit. Not as good as we thought, but you can listen to the game on 97.3 ESPN. At Pompey on Sixers. He's a fine Pitt Panther. I'll give you that. You're a nice man, Keith Pompey, to come on the show with this WVU shirt.
I'm just going to say this, and I'm going to regret it. Go Mountaineers.
You got that on tape? We got that on tape for the next time you're on.
All right, bye.
Keith Pompey, Philadelphia Inquirer, at Pompey on Sixers here on the Sports Bash.